The Veluxy Dominion had ruled their sector of space for 10,000 years. Their empire stretched across 40 star systems. Their ships were the finest in the galaxy. Their soldiers were bred for war from the moment they hatched, and they believed with absolute certainty that they were the supreme species in existence. High Overseer Crick stood in the command chamber of his flagship and watched the planet burn below. Vidia 7. The humans called it a small colony on the edge of Veluxy territory, 20 cities, farms that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, schools where human children learned to read, hospitals where the sick were healed. All of it was now fire and ash. The purification is complete. His second announced, no life signs detected on the surface. Crick's clipped his mandibles in satisfaction. How many? To 3 million. High Overseer. Every human on the planet has been eliminated. It had taken only 3 hours. The humans had no military presence on Vidia 7. It was a farming world, a peaceful settlement of families who wanted nothing more than to grow crops and raise children under an alien sun. They had sent no threats. They had made no aggressive moves. Their only crime was existing to close to value space, and for that crime they had paid with their lives. Begin the broadcast. Crisis ordered. I want every species in this sector to see what happens when you expand toward the Dominion. Let this serve as a lesson. The recording began to transmit images of burning cities, footage of orbital bombardment turning green fields into glass. The screams of humans as fire fell from the sky. It was a message of absolute power, a demonstration that the Veluxy did not negotiate. They did not warn. They simply destroyed. Across the galaxy, species received the broadcast. They watched in silence. They understood the message, and they did what they had always done. When the Veluxy showed their strength, they looked away. 3 weeks later, the survey ship Wandering Star dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the Vidia system. Captain Alelina Vasquez stood on her bridge and smiled. Her ship had been in deep space for 8 months. The crew was tired, their supplies were low, and Vidia 7 was known for the best food in the outer colonies. She was already imagining fresh bread and real fruit. Take us in, she ordered. And someone, get the colony on comms. Tell them we want to trade for supplies. Communications officer tried to make contact. Nothing. He tried again. Still nothing. Maybe their relay is down, the navigator suggested. Captain Vasquez felt the first touch of cold in her stomach. She had been in space for 30 years. She knew what silence meant. Increase speed. Get us to the colony. Now the Wandering Star raced toward Vidia 7. As they approached, the sensors began to give them information. Information that made no sense. Information that Vasquez refused to believe. Captain, the sensor officer said, his voice shaking, I'm not detecting any cities. The atmospheric readings show massive particulate matter ash. There's ash in the atmosphere everywhere. That's not possible. There were 20 cities, 2 million people. Captain, I'm not detecting any life signs. None. The entire planet is dead. They entered orbit. They looked down at what remained. The cities were gone. In their place were craters of melted glass. Farms were burned wastelands. The rivers ran black with ash. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. The only sound on the planet was the wind carrying the dust of 2 million dead. Captain Vasquez grabbed the edge of her console to keep herself. Standing, her crew stared at the screens. In complete silence, someone began to cry, another fell to their knees. Vasquez felt tears running down her face, but she did not notice them. All she could see was death, death on a scale she could not process. Get me the automated distress beacons, she whispered. There must be survivors. There must be someone. They found the beacons. They were still transmitting. But they were not distress calls. They were recordings. The colonists had known they were going to die. They had used their final minutes to send messages. Messages to families on Earth. Messages to friends on other worlds. Messages begging someone to remember them. Vasquez listened to a mother saying goodbye to her daughter on a distant station. She listened to children singing a song they had learned in school. She listened to an old man reciting the names of everyone in his town so they would not be forgotten. She listened until she could not listen anymore. Record everything she said. Every beacon, every message, every image of what they did to this world. Record it all and send it to Earth. Send it everywhere. Let humanity see what happened here. The transmission went out. It traveled through relay stations across human space. It reached Earth in hours, and when it arrived, it played on every screen in homes and offices, in schools and government buildings, on ships and stations, everywhere humans lived. They stopped what they were doing. They watched Vidya 7 burn. They heard the final messages of the dead. They saw what the Veluxy had done. For 3 days humanity went silent. No one spoke about what they had seen. No one discussed what should be done. Words seemed pointless. Words seemed small. How do you respond to the murder of 2 million innocent people? What do you say when children are burned alive for the crime of existing? On the 4th day, Earth spoke. The United Terran Assembly gathered in emergency session. Representatives from every colony, every station, every clear's throat ship that could send a delegate filled the chamber. The Speaker of the Assembly, woman named Ruth Akefer, stood at the podium. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with something cold and terrible. I will not ask for debate, she said. There is nothing to debate. I will not ask for a vote. The vote was taken the moment we saw our people die. I am here to invoke an ancient protocol, one that has not been used into 100 years. The covenant of blood. A murmur ran through the chamber. Everyone knew what the covenant meant. It was a promise made in the earliest days of human expansion. A promise that no matter how far humanity spread, no matter how divided they became, they would always answer one call, the call that said their people had been attacked, the call that demanded response. Every ship, Ruth Akefer continued, every station, every colony, every human who can hold a weapon or pilot a vessel, we are calling them all. We are going to war. Veluxy High Council received reports of increased human activity. Ships were moving, fleets were gathering, but they dismissed the information. Humans were scattered across hundreds of worlds. They had no unified military. Their technology was generations behind Veluxy designs. What could they possibly do? 2 weeks later, the first sensor stations on the border of Veluxy space detected something strange, a gravity wake, a disturbance in the fabric of space itself. Something was coming, something massive. They adjusted their sensors. They ran the calculations again and again, because the numbers could not Be right, the numbers said there were. Thousands of ships approaching, then. Tens of thousands, then more, of Veluxi. Commander sent a message to the High Council. His voice was steady but fear leaked through every word. We are detecting a fleet, a human fleet. Current count is over 100,000 vessels. And rising, they are not slowing down. They are heading directly for our space. The Council demanded clarification. 100,000 ships was impossible. No species had ever assembled such a force. Humans were farmers and traders. They were soft, they were weak, they did not have the will for war. The next report came an hour later. The count had risen to 150,000. High Overseer Crix, the architect of Vidia 7's destruction, dismissed the reports as human lies. They were trying to frighten the Dominion into submission. It would not work. The Veluxi feared nothing, but as the days passed, the count kept rising. 200,000. 250,000. And still they came, ships of every size and type, warships and freighters, mining vessels with their drills, converted to weapons, passenger liners, carrying volunteers, generation ships that had not moved in decades, their engines burning bright, private yachts, flown by ordinary citizens who had never held a weapon but refused to stay behind. The final count reached 300,000. 300,000 ships carrying the rage of a species that had been shown no mercy. 300,000 vessels, each one crewed by humans who had watched their people burn and decided that silence was not an option. The Veluxi looked at the approaching armada and finally understood what they had done. They had not attacked a colony, they had awakened something that should have been left sleeping, something ancient and terrible, something that would not stop until it had an answer for every life. They had taken. The stars themselves seemed to tremble as humanity came for its revenge. Admiral James Okonkwo had served in the Terran Navy for 40 years. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belts. He had defended colonies from raiders. He had seen battle and blood and death, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he saw on the screens of his flagship. Ships. Everywhere, ships stretching from horizon to horizon in every direction. Ships so numerous that the sensors could not count them all at once. The fleet filled the space around the rally point like a metal sea, and more were arriving every hour. Current count is 280,000. His tactical officer reported, "We're receiving registration signals from vessels we don't even have records for. Some of these ships haven't left their home stations in decades." Akono nodded. Slowly he understood why the Covenant of Blood was not just a military protocol. It was a promise that every human had made to every other human since the first colonies were established. If you are attacked, we will come. If you die, we will answer. Distance means nothing. Politics means nothing. We are one people and we protect our own. The people of Vidia 7 had been murdered, and so humanity had answered, not with words, not with sanctions or diplomatic protests, with ships with weapons, with 300,000 vessels crewed by ordinary people who had watched children burn and decided that they would not stand aside. Admiral, the communications officer, said, "We're receiving a transmission from the Unified Stellar Congress. They're demanding an explanation for our mobilization." Put it through. The face of a Zelani diplomat appeared on the screen. The Zelani were a peaceful species known throughout the galaxy as mediators and negotiators. This particular diplomat looked terrified. Admir Akono, the Zelani said. Congress insists that you explain this. Unprecedented military action. 300,000 ships represents the largest fleet in galactic history. The other species are frightened. They fear you intend conquest. Akono looked at the diplomat for a long moment, then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. He pressed a button and an image appeared on the screen. A little girl, perhaps 6 years old, smiling at the camera. She had dark hair and bright eyes, and she was holding a flower. She had picked from a field on Vidya 7. This is Maria Santos. Akono said she was in the first grade at the Vidya primary school. She wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. She loved animals. She used to feed the birds outside her window every morning. He pressed the button again. Another image appeared, a scorched crater where a city used to be. This is where she died. Her and 3 million other people, children, parents, grandparents, teachers and doctors and farmers, people who never hurt anyone, people who just wanted to live their lives in peace. The Zelani shifted uncomfortably. Admiral, I understand your grief, but no, you don't understand. None of you understand. You watched the broadcast of Vidya 7 burning, and you did nothing. You received reports of genocide, and you filed them away. You calculated that the Veluxi were too powerful and decided it was safer to look away. That's what you always do. That's what every species does when the strong attack the weak. Akono leaned forward, but we don't look away. We can't, because every human knows that somewhere in the galaxy they might be the next target. Every human knows that their children might be the ones burning, so we made a promise to each other, a promise that if it happened we would answer, all of us, no matter the cost. What do you intend to do? The Zelani asked. We intend to make sure that no one ever thinks they can murder our people without consequence again. He cut the transmission. On the Veluxi home world, the High Council was in chaos. Reports kept arriving, each one worse than the last. The human fleet was real. The human fleet was massive, and the human fleet was coming directly for them. This is impossible, High Overseer. Crix insisted. Humans are weak. They are scattered. They have no central authority. How can they coordinate such a response? The intelligence minister spoke carefully. High Overseer, it appears we have misunderstood human psychology. They are not a unified empire. That is true, but they have something stronger than central authority. They have family. What does that mean to humans? All other humans are family, not in a political sense, in an emotional sense. When we attacked Vidya 7, we did not attack single colony. We attacked their children, their brothers, their sisters. Every human in the galaxy looks at the dead of Vidya 7 and sees their own family. Crix waved a claw dismissively. Emotion is weakness. Our ships are superior. Our soldiers are bred for combat. We will destroy them. High Overseer, we have 800 capital ships. They have 300,000 vessels of all types. Even if each of our ships destroys 20 of theirs, we will still be overwhelmed. Then we will call for allies. The Crane will fight with us. The Vastari owe us debts. We will. None of them will come. High Overseer, I have already inquired. Every species we contacted gave the same answer. They will not oppose the humans. Not for this, not after what we did for The first time, Crix felt something. Cold in his thorax, something he had never experienced before, fear in the Congress chamber. Species who had spent centuries in conflict gathered to watch events unfold. The Zelani sat with the Kreen, despite their long rivalry. The Vastarari shared space with their ancient enemies, the Taro. All feuds were forgotten. All eyes were on the screens showing the human armada. I don't understand, a young Crefin delegate said. Why are they doing this? They cannot win. Their ships are outdated, their weapons are weaker. They will lose thousands of vessels, millions of lives. An old Tauric scholar, one of the few who had studied human history, answered quietly, "You are asking the wrong question. You are asking whether they can win. Humans do not ask that question. They ask whether they should fight, and if the answer is yes, they fight until they cannot fight anymore. But the cost means nothing to them. I have studied their history. They once fought a war on their home world that killed 60 million of them. When it ended, they built monuments to the dead and promised to never forget. Then, within a few generations, they fought again and again and again. They are not a species that calculates cost and benefit. They are a species that answers injustice with blood. Then what will happen? The old scholar turned to look at the screens. The human fleet was beginning to move. 300,000 ships accelerating toward value space. I think, he said softly, we are about to see what humans are truly capable of. And I suspect we will never look at them the same way again. Admiral Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Remembrance. His flagship, around him officers monitored thousands of data streams. The fleet was in motion. The course was set. There was no turning back. He opened a channel to all ships. His voice would reach 300,000 vessels. Millions of ears would hear his words. This is Admiral Okonkwo. In 3 days we will reach Veluxy territory. In 5 days we will engage their defense fleet. In 7 days we will stand before their home world. Many of us will not survive this journey. Many of us will die far from home in the cold of space, surrounded by enemies. But we do not go to die. We go to deliver a message." He paused, looking at the stars on his view screen. The message is simple. You can fear us or you can respect us. You can trade with us or you can ignore us. You can be our friends or you can be strangers. But if you touch our people, if you harm our children, if you think that distance or numbers or technology will protect you from our response, then you will learn what we truly are. We are humanity. We do not forget, we do not forgive, and we do not stop. He straightened his uniform. All ships engage engines. We have a debt to collect. The fleet moved as one. 300,000 vessels burning toward the heart of an empire that had never known fear. Behind them the galaxy watched, and for the first time in galactic history, every species understood the same thing at the same moment. Humanity was no longer scattered collection of colonies. They were a force, a family, a people who would cross the stars and fight impossible odds for the sake of strangers who shared nothing but their species. And they were coming. The human armada moved through space like a river of steel. It passed through neutral territories without stopping. It ignored hails from curious stations. It had one destination, and nothing would slow its approach. Species that had never seen more than a handful of human ships now watched thousands pass their borders. The Zelani counted them from their observation posts and lost track after the first 100,000. The crane lined their border with sensors and recorded everything, adding the data to their military archives with notes marked extreme caution. The Vastari simply closed their ports and hoped the tide of ships would pass them by. In the neutral station of Harmony Point, beings from dozens of species gathered around view screens to watch the fleet pass. Veluxy merchant stranded far from home when the war began stood in a corner and tried not to draw attention, but others noticed him. They did not attack. They did not threaten. They simply looked at him with expressions that said, "Everything you did this, you brought this upon yourselves." The fleet reached the first Veluxy system in for days. The Coral system was the gateway to the Dominion, 3 planets, 2 moons, and a massive defensive station that had never been breached. The Veluxy had fortified it with everything they had. 800 warships, the finest in their fleet, waited in perfect formation. Behind them, orbital weapons platforms created a web of death, and behind those the station itself, armed with enough firepower to crack a moon. Commander Thrax of the Veluxy Defense Fleet looked at his tactical display and felt confident. Yes, the humans had numbers, but the Veluxy had technology. They had training. They had weapons that could destroy human ships before they even came into range. This would be a slaughter, but not in the way the humans expected. He opened a channel to the approaching fleet, human vessels. "This is Commander Thrax of the Veluxy Dominion. You are entering sovereign territory. Stop your advance immediately, and we may allow you to retreat. Continue forward, and you will be destroyed." Silent human vessels respond. "This is your only warning." The response came, but it was not what Thrax expected. Instead of words, his communication system received a data file. When his officers opened it, text began scrolling across every screen in the command center. Names, thousands of names, then hundreds of thousands, then millions. "What is this?" Thrax demanded. His communications officer spoke in a shaking voice. "Commander, these are the names of every human who died on Vidia. 7 all to 3 million of them. They are transmitting every name." The list continued. Names and ages. Children as young as 2 years old, elderly as old as 112, families listed together, parents and children who had died side by side. The transmission went on for hour after hour, for hours in total. Every name, every life that had been ended. When the list finished, a single voice came through. "Admiral Akinquo, those were our people. Now we are going to tell you what comes next." The human fleet advanced. Commander Thrax gave the order to fire. His ships unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams cut through space. Missiles streaked toward the approaching armada. Orbital platforms added their fire to the storm. The space between the two fleets became a wall of destruction. Human ships began to die. The first wave, older Freyers and mining ships that had been converted to war, flew straight into the barrage. They exploded by the dozens, by the hundreds. Their crews had known they would not survive. They had volunteered anyway. Their job was simple: absorb fire so that others could get through, and others did get through. For every human ship destroyed, 3 more emerged from the fire. They came in waves, endless waves pouring through gaps in the Veluxy formation. Their weapons were weaker, their shields thinner, but their Were so many of them, so impossibly many. Thrax watched his tactical display. With growing horror, his ships were scoring kill after kill. They were destroying the enemy at a rate that should have ended any battle in minutes. But the enemy kept coming. For every ship they killed, another took its place. It was like trying to stop a flood with a bucket. Commander, his second in command, reported, "We've destroyed over 12,000 enemy vessels, but they've breached our outer perimeter. They're surrounding our flanks. Pull the wings back. Concentrate fire on the center. The center is overwhelmed. There are too many targets. We can't track them all." The Velaxy formation, so perfect at the start of the battle, began to break apart. Human ships swarmed around individual Velaxy vessels like insects around a dying animal. Some of the human ships were barely armed, using their own hulls as weapons, ramming into Velaxy engines and weapon systems. It was suicide. It was madness. And it was working. A Value cruiser exploded, then another. The defensive platforms fell silent as human boarding parties cut their way inside. Station itself came under attack from thousands of ships, its shields flickering under the constant bombardment. Commander Thrax opened a channel to his flagship's crew. "All hands, prepare for close combat. They're going to breach our hull." His second stared at him. "Commander, we should retreat. We can regroup at the inner systems. If we retreat, they follow. If we fall back, they advance. This fleet does not stop. This fleet does not slow down. We can only make them pay for every kilometer." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Velaxy defensive fleet had been reduced to scattered survivors fleeing toward home. The station was a burning wreck. The weapons platforms drifted as debris. The Kororoth system belonged to humanity. Admiral Okonkwo surveyed the aftermath. From his bridge, his fleet had paid a terrible price. 23,000 ships destroyed. Nearly 1 million humans dead. But they had won, and more importantly, they had sent a message. "Casualty reports are coming in," his tactical officer said quietly. "It's bad, Admiral, I know, but look at the tactical display. Tell me what you see." The officer looked. The remaining human ships, over 170,000 of them, were already forming back into formation, already preparing to continue the advance. "They're not stopping, the officer said. "After all that, they're not even pausing." "That's right, and somewhere in the Velaxy High Council, they're watching the same thing. They're seeing that we lost 20,000 ships and we're still coming. They're calculating how many more ships we're willing to lose, and they're starting to understand the answer." "What's the answer, Admiral?" Okono looked at the stars ahead. Somewhere beyond them lay the Velaxy home world. Somewhere beyond them sat the beings who had ordered the death of 2 million innocent people. All of them. We're willing to lose all of them. Every ship, every person. We will fight until we have nothing left, and they will never be able to say the same." Survivor of the Valuxy fleet, limping toward home in a damaged cruiser, sent transmission to the High Council. His voice was raw with shock. "They are not fighting like soldiers," he reported. "They are not fighting like any species we have ever encountered. When we kill them, they do not retreat. When we hurt them, they do not fear. They fight like something we woke up, something old and terrible that was sleeping in the dark." He paused, struggling to find words for what he had witnessed. "They are not coming to negotiate. They are not coming to conquer, they are coming to make us pay, and God's help us, they will not stop until the debt is settled. The transmission ended. The High Council sat in silence, and for the first time in 10,000 years, the rulers of the Veluxy Dominion understood that they might not survive what they had started. The human fleet continued its advance. 2 more systems fell in the following days. 2 more Veluxy defensive lines crumbled against the weight of numbers that should have been impossible. 2 more steps toward the heart of an empire that had believed itself invincible. Humanity was coming, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The Valui home world was called Thrice Prime. It was a beautiful planet covered in vast forests and crystal clear our oceans. 12 billion Veluxy lived there, in cities that reached toward the sky, in tunnels that burrowed deep into the earth. For 10,000 years it had been the center of an empire, the jewel of the Dominion, the safest place in the galaxy. Now it was surrounded. 280,000 human ships formed a sphere around the planet. They blocked out the stars. They filled every orbital approach. They hung in space like a metal shell, so thick that the Veluxy on the surface could see them during the day. A dark band across their sky, blocking the light of their sun. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral Okonkwo stood before the view screen and looked at the world below. 12 billion lives, more than 5 times the entire human population of the outer colonies. Enough people to fill a 100 Vidia 7. South, we have achieved total orbital control, his tactical officer reported. No ships are entering or leaving the system. Their planetary defenses are active but not firing. They're waiting for us to make the first move. Akona nodded slowly. Status of our fleet: 283,000 ships operational. We lost another 4,000 in the final approach. The Veluxy threw everything they had at us. It wasn't enough. 47,000 ships lost. Since the beginning, nearly 2 million humans dead. The cost of reaching this moment was carved in blood and fire across half a dozen star systems, and now they were here. Now they had the power to end everything. Open a channel to the planetary government. Akono ordered wide broadcast. I want every on that planet to hear this. The channel opened. Akono spoke. This is Admiral James Okonkwo of the United Terran Fleet. We have come a long way to reach you. We have fought through your defenders. We have broken your fleets. We now hold your world in our hands, but we have not come to destroy you. He let that sink in for a moment. We have come to show you something. For the next 7 days you will watch a broadcast. You will see what was done to Vidia 7. You will see the cities that were burned, the schools that were destroyed, the children who were murdered. You will see the faces of 2.3 million people who did nothing wrong except exist too close to your empire. You will watch and you will understand what your leaders did in your name. The broadcast began on every screen across Thurs Prime. Images appeared. Vidia 7 before the attack. A green world with white cities and golden fields, children playing in parks, families eating dinner together, markets filled with laughter and trade, peaceful colony living a peaceful life. Then the images changed. Veluxy ships entering orbit, weapons charging, fire falling from the sky, cities burning, people running, screaming, dying. The screams were played without mercy. The final messages of the dead recorded in their last moments. broadcast to every corner of the Galaxy home world. For 7 days the broadcast continued. It played in homes and public squares. It played in government buildings and military barracks. It played in schools where young Valui were old enough to understand what they were seeing. There was no escape from it. The humans controlled all communications. They made sure every saw the truth. The effect was devastating. The Veluxy population had been told that Vidya 7 was a military target. They had been told that the humans were aggressive invaders who threatened Dominion security. They had been told that the attack was a noble defense of territory. Now they saw the truth. Farmers and teachers, doctors and artists, children who had never seen a weapon burned alive because their leaders feared what they might become. Riots broke out in a dozen cities. Citizens stormed government buildings, demanding answers. The military, demoralized by defeat after defeat, refused to fire on their own people. High Council, the body that had ruled the Dominion for centuries, found itself trapped between a population that no longer trusted them and an enemy fleet that could destroy them at will. High Overseer Crix, the architect of Vidya 7's destruction, retreated to his private chambers. He had expected the humans to attack immediately. He had expected fire and death, a quick end to his empire. This was worse. This slow revelation, this forced confrontation with what he had done. He found himself watching the broadcast, unable to look away from the faces of the dead. On the 7th day, Admiral Okonkwo opened a channel to the High Council. I will speak with your Empress, he said, her and no one else. You have one art to arrange it. Empress Vera was old. She had ruled the Dominion for 200 years. She had seen wars and treaties, victories and defeats. She had watched her empire grow and prosper under her guidance, and now she sat alone in her throne room, watching human ships fill her sky, and she understood that everything was about to change when Admiral Okonkwo's image appeared before her. She studied him carefully. He was scarred and tired. His eyes held a weight that she recognized. The weight of sending people to die, the weight of decisions that could not be undone. Admiral, she said, you have proven your point. Your species is more dangerous than we believed. What do you want? I want the commanders who ordered the attack on Vidya 7, every officer who participated in the massacre. They will face trial for their crimes. You want us to hand over our own people. They are not your people. They are war criminals. And yes, I want them. The Empress clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. And if we refuse, Akono gestured toward the view screen. I have to 180,000 ships in orbit around your world. Each one is crewed by humans who watch their brothers and sisters burn. If I gave the order, we could reduce your planet to glass in a matter of hours. We could kill 12 billion of your people as payment for 2 million of ours. He leaned forward, but I am not going to give that order, because if I did, I would become what we are fighting against. I would become you. Then why are you here? To give you a choice. Hand over the criminals. Allow human observers in your territory to ensure this never happens again. Pay Clear's throat reparations. That will be used to build a memorial on Vidya 7. Do these things and we will leave. We will not conquer you. We will not occupy you. We will simply go home. And if we choose war instead, then we We'll fight until one of us is destroyed. It might be us. We have already lost 2 million people. We are prepared to lose more, but I think you know how this ends. I think you know that your fleets cannot stop us. I think you know that your technology cannot save you. Only question is how many of your people will die before you accept that truth. The Empress was silent for a long moment. She thought of the broadcasts. She had watched the burning cities, the dying children. She thought of the riots in her streets and the soldiers who refused to fire on their own citizens. She thought of an empire that had lasted 10,000 years, brought to the edge of destruction by a species they had dismissed as weak. Why, she finally asked, why not simply destroy us? You have the power, you have the justification. Why offer mercy? Akono's expression softened slightly. Because 2 million of our people are dead, and when I look at your world, I see 12 billion more who might die if we continue this war. Children who had nothing to do with Vidya 7, families who were lied to by their leaders, people who are just as innocent as the ones we lost. He straightened. We came here for justice, not genocide. If we wanted to be monsters, we could have stayed home. Monsters don't fly across the galaxy to give their enemies a choice. Only humans do that. The Empress looked at the human before her. She saw something in his eyes that she had never seen in the eyes of a conquered enemy. Not fear, not hatred, not the desperate calculation of survival. She saw mercy in some that was more terrifying than any weapon he possessed. I will consider your terms, she said quietly. You will have my answer tomorrow. Take whatever time you need. We're not going anywhere. The transmission ended. The Empress sat alone in her throne room, surrounded by the shadows of an empire that had never known defeat, and she began to understand that the humans had already won, not because of their ships or their weapons or their willingness to die. They had won because they could have destroyed everything, and they chose not to. That kind of strength was beyond anything the Veloxi had ever faced, and she knew with terrible certainty that her people would never forget it. The surrender came at dawn on Thrice Prime. Empress V. Kira addressed her people from the steps of the Imperial Palace, the same place where her ancestors had declared victory after victory for 10,000 years. Now she stood there to announce something the Veloxi had never experienced: defeat. We have accepted the terms offered by humanity, she said. Officers responsible for the Vidya 7 massacre will be handed over for trial. Human observers will be permitted in our territory. We will pay reparations for what was done. The crowd below was silent. No one protested. No one cheered. They simply listened, still processing everything they had seen in the 7 days of broadcasts. We were told that the colony attack was necessary. The Empress continued. We were told that the humans were a threat. We were lied to, and because of those lies, 2 million innocent people died. Today we begin to pay for that crime, not because we are weak, but because we were wrong. Across the galaxy, beings of every species watched the broadcast. They saw the proud Veloxi Dominion bend its knee to a species they had dismissed as scattered and harmless. They saw an empire that had never known mercy learn to accept it, and they understood that everything they believed about power and strength had just changed. The war criminals were handed over within the week. 47 officers, including High Overseer Crix himself were transported to a neutral station where an interspecies tribunal had been assembled. Admiral Okonkwo had insisted on this. He wanted the galaxy to see that humanity believed in justice, not revenge. The trial lasted 3 months. Every piece of evidence was examined, every witness was heard, every defendant was given the chance to explain their actions. In the end, 43 were found guilty of crimes against sentient beings. Crix, the architect of the massacre, was sentenced to life imprisonment on a dead moon where he would spend his remaining years surrounded by nothing but rocks and silence. Some humans thought the sentence was too lenient. They wanted executions, they wanted pain, they wanted the Veluxy to suffer as Vidia 7 had suffered. Admiral Okonkwo addressed these criticisms in a speech that was broadcast across human space. "I understand your anger," he said. "I feel it too. Every day I think about the people we lost. Every night I see their faces, but we did not cross the galaxy to become executioners. We did not sacrifice 1,000,000 lives so we could take 2,000,000 more." He looked directly into the camera. The dead of Vidia 7 were peaceful people. They were farmers and teachers, doctors and artists. They believed in building, not destroying. If we honor their memory with more death, we betray everything they were. We become the thing that killed them. Justice is not the same as revenge, and today we have justice. Human fleet departed space the following month. They left behind observation teams and diplomatic missions, but the warships went home. 280,000 vessels carrying the survivors of the greatest military campaign in galactic history scattered back to their ports and stations. The war was over, but the effects had just begun. The unified Stellar Congress created new laws within the year. Planetary destruction was declared the ultimate crime, punishable by unified response from all member species. A permanent peacekeeping force was established with significant human participation. For the first time, the galaxy had rules that protected the weak from the strong. Other changes were subtler but equally important. Species that had ignored humanity now sought them out for trade and alliance. Governments that had dismissed human colonies as insignificant began to treat them with careful respect. Everyone remembered the lesson of the value. Underestimate humanity at your peril. And on Vidia 7, construction began on the memorial. The dead world slowly came back to life. The ashes were carefully collected and preserved. Melted glass of the destroyed cities was shaped into monuments. A wall was built, stretching for Killam, with the names of every person who had died carved into its surface to 3 million names, each one a reminder of what had been lost and what had been avenged. 10 years after the war, a young Veluxy historian named Ketha made the journey to Vidia 7. She was barely hatched when the massacre occurred, too young to understand what her people had done, but as she grew older, she had learned, she had studied the broadcasts, she had read the trial transcripts, she had seen the faces of the dead. She needed to see the memorial for herself. The planet was still mostly empty. The atmosphere had been cleaned, and grass was beginning to grow in places, but the scars of destruction were everywhere. Craters marked where cities had stood. Rivers still ran dark in places, carrying the last traces of ash to the sea. Kathra walked along the memorial wall, reading names at random. Santos family, Chen family, Akon. Family, hundreds of families, each one. Wiped out in a single afternoon, she stopped at a small section where the names were arranged in a circle. These were the children of the Vidya primary school. The youngest was 4 years old. She began to cry. The tears fell freely, running down her carapace and dripping onto the stone below. It's all right to cry, Keth returned. An old human woman stood nearby, watching her with gentle eyes. She wore simple clothes and carried a small watering can. There were flowers growing at the base of the wall, and the woman was tending them. You work here? Key asked. I'm one of the caretakers. I've been here since the memorial opened. Key looked back at the wall. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't mean anything. I know words can't fix what we did, but I needed to come here. I needed to see. The old woman nodded slowly. You're the first Vuxi to visit. Did you know that? 10 years and you're the first one who came. The others are ashamed. They don't want to face what happened, and you do. Cathra was silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since she was old enough to understand. Why didn't you destroy us? Your fleet had our home world surrounded. You could have killed us all. After what we did, you would have been justified. Why did you choose mercy? The old woman set down her watering can. She looked at the wall of names and her eyes grew distant. My daughter's name is on this wall, she said quietly. Maya, she was 32 years old. She was a teacher at the primary school. She loved her students. She used to send me videos of them singing songs they had learned in class. She turned to face Catherine directly. When I heard what happened, I wanted your people dead. I wanted every in the galaxy to burn the way my daughter burned. I spent weeks drowning in that hatred. It was the only thing that kept me going. What changed? I remembered something Maya told me once. She said that the hardest thing about teaching was not passing on knowledge, it was passing on kindness. Any machine can teach facts. Only a person can teach a child to be good. The old woman smiled, though tears were running down her face. If I had given into hatred, if I had demanded your destruction, I would have betrayed everything Maya believed in. I would have taught the galaxy that humans respond to evil with more evil, and then what would have been the point of anything she lived for? Kathra stared at her. So you chose mercy for her sake. For her sake, for the sake of all the people we lost who believed in something better, and for the sake of your children who didn't ask to be born into a species that commits massacres. She reached out and touched Kathra's claw gently. You came here to apologize, but what I really want is for you to go home and make sure it never happens again. Teach your people what we learned, that strength without mercy is just cruelty, that power without compassion is just tyranny, that the measure of a civilization is not how many enemies it can destroy, but how many it can forgive. Key looked at the wall of names. 2.3 million dead, and behind her stood a woman who had lost her daughter in that massacre, offering forgiveness instead of hatred. How can you not hate us? She whispered. Oh, I do, the old woman said. Part of me always will, but I refuse to let that hate define me. I refuse to let it win. That's what Maya would have wanted. She picked up her watering can and returned to her flowers. Now go home, young one, and be better than your ancestors. That's the only memorial that really matters. Kia stood at the wall for a long time. After the old woman left, she read more names. She memorized faces from the photographs. Embedded in the stone, she made a promise to herself and to the dead that she would spend her life making sure nothing like this ever happened again. The sun set over Vidya 7, the memorial wall glowed in the fading light to 3,000,000 names shining like stars, and somewhere in the distance, flowers grew. Where cities once burned, humanity had won its war, but more importantly, it had won something far harder to achieve. It had won without becoming the monster it was fighting, and that in the end was the greatest victory of all.